呢，就骗人家15万，你是不是找别女人？你说什么？你找别的女人？找别的女人过吗？
你结婚一天就跑了，我上哪找去？
今天结婚，明天就回娘家了，再也不回来了。你前一次结婚，我问你，来，手机给我拿着。
过得好能回来吗？
过得好能回来了吗？连日子都不过，什么叫过得好过不好？
这过得不好，他当然回娘家了，当然要回娘。
永远是他的后盾，结婚第2天就回娘家，什么后盾？
过得不好，给我放在家人了，不是你家永远是他家，他下什么回就
下什么回？你回你当然回去给人过日子呀。
那要配上我姐吗？你
配上你姐？配上你当着人家结婚要彩礼干什么？你要彩礼干什么？不要彩礼啊！结婚不要彩礼，你这几次婚了？这是第5次结婚了，你我不知道吗？这照片没有证据，跟我有什么关系？5次婚，别人都没人给我要彩礼，怎么你要什么？怎么告诉你？别人那是因为不懂法，现在懂法必须得要。你们离婚以后，我问你是不是为你要彩礼？是不是打了张借条？是不是打了张借条？为了离婚，是不是你给他打了张借条？说是不是？
哎，我进书都没看上的，是这孩子年龄小不懂事儿，
年龄小不懂事儿，都结5次婚了还不懂事儿？
就是不懂事才结了5次婚。
多大？
我问你，谁让闺女像你家闺女这样？你们认识家成家庭？
你不要呀！
你光荣！
不要说我闺女，
不要说你闺女，那必须得说你闺女。如果这事情和她没关系，我们能说吗？看见没有？打了借条15万，能不能看到？能不能看到？
看不着，
看不着是不是？名下现在不用，你就这样看就行啊！我知道你想撕他，不给你机会，知不知道？你现在是什么情况啊？年纪轻轻的20多刚刚岁，你们一家住的房子都靠你闺女结婚彩礼钱买的。
别这么说我闺女，
别这么说，名下的是你楼下的开的都是好车，你一家干什么呀？天天
开公司的，
开公司的，哪有的公司？怎么公司在哪？我去看看。
我也给他领证了，
就是我告诉你，根据中华人民共和国民法典婚姻法规定，你跟别人就算领了证，1天日子只要
吓唬谁呢？
吓唬谁呢？是不是？
拿法律找我，
不懂法，我来给你普法。我问你，当时你们离婚的时候，是不是法院已经判决说你们刚刚虽然领了结婚证，但是你们没有事实同居关系，连半年都没有啊？你结婚第2天就回娘家，你是不是同意说把15万彩礼还过来？是不是别人家打了借条？打了借条为什么不还钱？打了借条为什么不还钱？
结完婚了，
结完婚了，你当时我问你，借条你非得，当时你离婚的时候怎么说的？为了跟人家离婚，为了好去嫁下一家，为了好去为下一家要28万8的彩礼，你现在是不是马上又要结婚了？结5次了，你想干什么呀？你结婚为营生吗？你结婚为儿戏吗？
你这现在不告知吗？那再写一遍。
你结婚为名义收人家彩礼，是不是？这叫诈骗，是叫骗婚，懂不懂？领了结婚证，这叫不叫骗婚吗？你跟人家1天日子都没过，我告诉你，就算领了结婚证，你只要跟人家过日子，不超过半年的彩礼全部。
快现在回来了，
我懂，不还是吧？
我姐跟你不还多丢人
啊！你丢人好，你的姐夫太多了，咱分不清了，不还是吧？不还行吧？走吧，时间上，你好话已经说尽。
回来吧，
干什么？
孩子。
不
要影响到我的孩子，
不影响您的孩子。他自己做的事，他不应该承担相应的责任吗？咱们还。
我孩子从此就跟外人没有任何关系，不想再责任。
人家也不想跟你们有关系，你要不是拿着人家彩礼钱不还，
你现在还趁的慌。
你还差，你可以不找，人家也可以不找你们，你找一个你满意的，给你100万、200万的，对，
找满意的，
还钱，别说话，还钱。
我孩子什么的让我高兴了，不高兴的随时可以回来。
啊，是你们娘家太厉害了，知不知道？
对，是的，因为
你结婚为营生，啥活不干，你结婚为营生，你自己干什么事，你们自己心里最清楚。
什么？
我跟你滚！
以后再也不会来你们家，闭嘴吧，闭嘴吧，别说话，别说话，闭上你的嘴！
从相亲到结婚再到离婚，只有短短4天。
From matchmaking to marriage and then to divorce, only a mere 4 days passed. The man sued for the return of the 148,000 yuan bride price, but the woman refused. Could this be considered marriage fraud? Recently, a jaw-dropping case was heard in the court of Yanhe County, Guizhou. Mr. Yang and Ms. Lu met on February 21, 2024, through a matchmaker from a matchmaking platform in Guiyang. After only 3 days of acquaintance, Mr. Yang decided to register for marriage with Ms. Lu and paid a bride price of 148,000 yuan via WeChat. However, unexpectedly, their marriage did not last long. Just the day after the wedding, on February 24th, they started discussing divorce. Their marriage lasted less than 2 days, which was both baffling and raised doubts about the legality of the marriage and whether there was any marriage fraud involved. How can a couple start talking about divorce less than a day after getting married? What did they view marriage as? What made the situation even more confusing was that the brief marriage coincided with a dispute over the bride price. In such a short time, the bride price became the focus, and the amount was quite substantial. After paying the 148,000 yuan bride price, Mr. Yang demanded the full refund from Ms. Lu when the marriage ended, but Ms. Lu firmly refused. Faced with this situation, some began to wonder whether this was a carefully planned marriage scam. After all, short-term marriages like this are often aimed at exchanging financial benefits, and some high-end hunters tend to hunt for large bride prices through short-term marriages. So why did Ms. Lu refuse to return the bride price? During the mediation process, the court learned that Ms. Lu claimed Mr. Yang had not truthfully disclosed his income and assets before the marriage, which was why she refused to return the bride price. This reasoning seemed a bit far-fetched, as from a legal perspective, the Supreme Court has already made it clear that marriage should not be used as a means of financial gain. Any attempt by either party to claim financial assets in the name of bride price should be subject to legal restrictions. If one party demands the return of the bride price, the court should generally support it. Nevertheless, after mediation and persuasion by the court, the two parties reached an agreement. Ms. Lu agreed to return 137,000 yuan of the bride price to Mr. Yang. After a series of negotiations, it turned out that Ms. Lu ended up keeping a net income of 11,000 yuan, which didn't seem like a loss for her. In her eyes, this deal might not have been a loss at all, and she may have even made a small profit. However, what is most puzzling about this case is whether it could be considered a case of marriage fraud. If it is not fraud, should we be concerned for the next man who could potentially become a victim? These types of short-term marriages, especially those involving bride price disputes, reveal a scam model in the marriage market, where some people design these situations purely for financial gain. Although the law has already made clear provisions, how to effectively curb such phenomena requires more legal enforcement and social attention.
Brothers who are still unmarried, if you're currently anxious about getting married, you must read this carefully. Nowadays, matchmaking has no longer been a simple emotional pairing. It has instead evolved into a business. Many women might engage in a relationship with you full of deception, with the aim of tricking you into marriage and taking your bride price. You might want to settle down through marriage, but their goal is completely different. They just want to take your money. In the past decade or so, the so-called flash marriage phenomenon has become increasingly common. Some people even rush to register their marriage after knowing each other for less than a day, with the longest being no more than 2 months of acquaintance before marriage. You must stay alert to this, because such situations often bring tragic consequences, leaving both parties empty-handed. You may think that a woman's enthusiasm, her active pursuit, and sweet words are genuine towards you, but in reality, many women are capable of pretending to be deeply affectionate, even if they don't like you at all. This is especially true for those men with low emotional intelligence, who are often manipulated by matchmaking platforms with malicious intent. These matchmaking platforms may tell you that for a certain amount of money, they will match you with the right partner, and most of the women you meet might come from Guizhou, Yunnan, Guangxi, and other places. The worst part is that some women, after obtaining the marriage certificate with you, will disappear just a few days later, leaving both you and your property gone. Even worse, some women may become pregnant with your child 2 months after meeting you, and then demand that you marry her, and even ask you to buy a house, a car, and pay a 300,000 yuan bride price. After marriage, life may make you question everything, arguing every day, criticizing everything about you, eventually leading you to want a divorce. Less than 2 months into the marriage, she might have an abortion, then take the bride price and run away. Some women might even leave after giving birth to a child. After selling the house and the car, she will disappear, and you will never be able to find her again. This kind of situation will cause you a huge financial loss, and it could even make you lose hundreds of thousands, or even millions, overnight. The money you earn with such hard work is not easy to come by. How can you bear such a blow? Nowadays, the matchmaking market is completely capitalized, and marriage and love often become part of a transaction. For you, what you see as love is often just a business in the eyes of others. It's worth noting that no woman will actively look for you, especially if she proposes marriage first. There are usually 2 possibilities behind that. One is that she is trying to trick you into giving her a bride price, and the other is that she is pregnant with someone else's child and urgently needs you to be the takeover man to take on her responsibility. Remember, you are not the male lead in a movie, nor are you a celebrity. Every penny you earn has probably been accumulated through hard work, whether it's through labor, moving bricks, or tightening screws. These earnings are hard to come by, so be very careful of women who seem sincere, but are actually out to deceive you for your money. Their intentions are not pure, and in the end, they could leave you empty-handed and mentally exhausted. In the matchmaking market, there are indeed some women who are lazy, aim to get something for nothing, and even expect to move in with luggage through marriage. As a friend, I sincerely advise you, Earning money is really not easy, so please be cautious and careful.
你们不是说骗婚没人管吗？我今天分享个真实的案例啊。
Some people may think that marriage fraud is something nobody cares about, but today I'm going to share a real case from my hometown to show everyone that things do have consequences. In this case, the woman actually committed marriage fraud twice, and ultimately was sentenced to 9 years in prison. This woman came from another place and married into Shandong. After marriage, she did not work, stayed at home all day, was lazy, and relied almost entirely on her husband and in-laws for support. Later, perhaps feeling that the money from her family wasn't enough, she started pretending to be single online, contacting other men, and falsely claiming she was about to get married. She used this method to gain the trust of several men, demanding them to pay what she called a bride price. Eventually, one of these men saw through her scam and reported it to the police, asking her to return the money she had deceived him out of. She refunded part of the money to that man, and the police gave her only a verbal warning in the end. So, she thought the police didn't really take any action. She believed the man's reaction was just an empty warning. However, not long after, she started scamming again, seeking new targets online. This time, she managed to deceive a total of 300,000 yuan in bride price. The victim reported her to the police again. After an investigation, the police confirmed that she was suspected of fraud and had committed the crime a second time. Since she was already married, her fraudulent behavior was easier to recognize. Moreover, the 300,000 yuan she had swindled was a large sum, which made the police take her actions more seriously. In the end, she was arrested and sentenced to 9 years in prison. After being sentenced, this woman cried and pleaded with her husband, begging him not to divorce her, and promised that after she got out of prison, she would be filial to her in-laws. However, no one believed her promises. Looking back, she was always unreasonable with her husband and in-laws, frequently scolding them, especially her mother-in-law. Nearly every time she was at home, she would scold her mother-in-law for hours. When her mother-in-law helped look after the children, she was impatient and would scold her whenever the child cried. Her father-in-law worked hard on construction sites to earn money, and she always tried to get the money into her hands. If it weren't for the 2 children, her husband would have divorced her long ago. In the end, her husband chose to divorce her, and now he is raising the 2 children on his own. This story tells us that even if some women don't divorce you, it doesn't necessarily mean they are a good wife or a good daughter-in-law. They may continuously cause trouble in the family and bring unnecessary disruptions. Therefore, when choosing a marriage partner, everyone must be more cautious and not let impulsiveness or fleeting infatuation lead you into unnecessary trouble.
骗彩礼新套路，真是防不胜防，7个男人8个都要中招。
There is a new trick in the marriage market to fraudulently obtain the bride price. And it is so hard to guard against that many men fall into this trap. It is said that 7 out of 8 men will be deceived by it. Nowadays, many women have realized the unspoken rule of asking for a large bride price before marriage, which many men find unacceptable. So, the woman might say, I am truly sincere about you. I don't need you to give me a bride price. She tells you that the bride price is just a token of your affection, and she doesn't demand it. Upon hearing this, some men may think this woman genuinely likes them and wants to marry them, leading them to form a false impression. In fact, this woman isn't doing this out of sentiment. Rather, she knows that if she asks for a high bride price from the very beginning, many men will be scared off. Later, when you've been dating for about 6 months and are ready to discuss marriage, at this stage, these women usually say something like, I'll give you as much dowry as you give me in bride price. If we truly love each other, I won't ask you for a bride price. Upon hearing this, many men feel that they've found a bargain and think that this woman is sensible, kind, and thoughtful. They believe that marrying her will ensure a lifetime of happiness, and they don't need to think any further. So, you marry her, and she doesn't ask for a single penny of the bride price. You think this marriage will be worry-free. However, the troubles often begin soon after the marriage. The woman might suddenly claim that there's an urgent matter in her family. Her relative is ill, and she begs the man for a loan of 150,000 yuan. Then she might say that a relative is building a house and needs an emergency loan of 100,000 yuan. At this point, the man might soften his heart and lend her the money. Once the money is in her hands, the woman's attitude changes. She starts to find faults with the man and may deliberately become distant and cold, showing no interest in continuing the marriage. She then begins to criticize the man for this and that, gradually driving him away from the marriage, leading to divorce. By the time the man finally realizes what has happened, the woman has already asked for large sums of money from him after the marriage. Possibly as much as 300,000 yuan. But by then, she has disappeared without a trace. At this point, the man might try to contact her to ask for the money back, but it is already too late. She has no sense of morality. She had treated the marriage as a scam, using the guise of marriage to swindle money.
To be honest, I don't feel much sympathy for those men who get scammed out of their bride price. The truth is, some men always think they can't marry because they can't afford the bride price. But the fact is clear. A woman who costs 300,000 yuan or 500,000 yuan to marry, how many years can she stay with you? I've seen so many cases where, after taking the bride price, the woman runs off the very next day. The bride price is actually designed to trick those honest men, the so-called honest men. You so-called honest men, why are you trying to get married by paying such high bride prices? It really worries me. After all, who else will dare to get married in the future if this continues? As for the men who have been scammed, I genuinely feel sorry for them, and I have a wishing you were more careful feeling inside. There are so many online cases of men being scammed out of their bride price. Don't you see them? Isn't this situation widespread enough? Especially in rural areas where marriage scams are more common. Often, the men who are scammed choose to keep quiet because they feel embarrassed and end up silently suffering the loss. These men know they've been scammed, but they're too afraid to speak out. You say the actions of these women who scam for the bride price aren't illegal? Of course, they're illegal, but often due to lack of evidence or because the women play dirty tricks, these men can't fight back. Their goal is to live off the bride price. Some of them have scammed not just once, but up to 5 times. So how can we handle these women who scam for marriage and bride prices? My personal suggestion is this. Since sometimes it's hard to deal with these women due to insufficient evidence or their deceitful tactics, why not heavily punish the men who blindly pay such high bride prices? Treat these high bride price payments as human trafficking, and I believe that these men will think twice in the future. If they hesitate, it will prevent those women from having any opportunity to scam again. Do you agree with my point of view? Feel free to leave your comments. I'm really interested in hearing your thoughts. If you like this video, please like and subscribe to our channel. Your support is extremely important to us, and we'll continue to bring you better programs. Thank you again for watching, and see you next time.